Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we have got rain and wind warnings issued for tomorrow, so we are going to see some exceptionally lively conditions. Tomorrow that lobe of the tropospheric polar vortex we've been speaking about for the past few days is going to be arriving, and it is going to be pushing in with a really quite severe squall line pushing along the cold front that will arrive for many through tomorrow morning into the afternoon. It's going to bring some torrential rain in places and some very strong gusty winds, and on the backside behind that cold front it's going to be turning much cooler with a blast of polar maritime air. Now again, nothing exceptional, but definitely below average, feeling a lot chillier than it's been recently. We have to look at in detail on the latest UKV, which goes into the weekend as well. We could be seeing some further lively weather with a southerly tracking jet stream. And then, of course, we'll have a look at the longer range, which is remaining fairly interesting. Nothing majorly out of the ordinary, but definitely suggestions that there could be some chillier, maybe even some slightly dry conditions from some of the runs. But there are also runs that keep us very unsettled with this southerly tracked northwest-southeast alignment of the jet stream. But we'll have a look at that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, do like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see the big wall of rain that we saw earlier today now clearing off all the way into Europe. Most places are now relatively dry behind that weather front. However, it's a brief respite, 12 to maybe 18 hours at most. You can already see for parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, and for Western Republic of Ireland, we're starting to see some really quite heavy showers moving in. And this is the first hint of that polar maritime air mass moving in, and that very cold, that very unsettled air, with very low pressure with that lobe of tropospheric polar vortex. Already some of these showers turning to snow over the higher ground of Scotland. More of this will be snow over the coming days because those upper air temperatures are cool. I wouldn't say it's going to be particularly cold. The upper air temperatures will be around the -5 line, which is a good few degrees below average, but it isn't exceptional. This time of year, in 2018, we saw the beast from the east, where the upper air temperatures got down to -15 to -20. So that's what proper cold is, and we're a good 10 to 15 degrees warmer than that. So chilly comparative to what we've had recently, but nothing too exceptional. If you do look at the temperatures, you can already see it is turning cooler in the north and the west. Temperatures dropping here towards the mid to low single digits, if not towards freezing. Further southwards, still mild, but that cold air will be moving in and will be in for all by tomorrow evening as that weather front does move through. Now, if you do have a look at the latest weather warnings, we've got numerous weather warnings issued for parts of England and Wales, with this first rain warning issued from 3 a.m. tonight or tomorrow morning until 2 p.m. tomorrow. And again, the heavy rain leading to some flooding and transport disruption. Again, to 10 to 15 millimetres in 2 hours. That's really for that Squall feature. And then over the course of the whole period, maybe 20 to 30 millimetres. You can see a band of heavy rain and squally winds will move eastwards. Again, really referring to that cold front. Now, further eastwards, we've got a more widespread rain warning from 5 a.m. tomorrow until 5 p.m. And I'm guessing the description is fairly similar. Again, we could see heavy rain for 3 to 6 hours. Most places will see 10 to 15 millimetres, maybe as much as 30 to 40 millimetres. And again, lightning and gusty winds could happen within that squall front with 50 mile per hour in places. And then we've got wind warning issued for southern and eastern coastal areas specifically, but actually drifting relatively far inland from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. And again, looking at the further details, 50 miles per hour, maybe as high as 60 or 70 under that squall feature. It is going to be very much one to watch. The squall feature could not be too intense, or it could be very intense. It's very difficult to forecast exactly where it will be and exactly where the most intense area will be, because it's similar to sort of a thunderstorm. We can say the likelihood is high, but it's very difficult to predict exactly how it will evolve. But if we do have a look at the latest UKV to see what that thinks this evening, you can see the showers continue to move in tonight, but then you can see it becomes organised with this squall feature for western areas, bringing some really heavy rain overnight, and you see the squall front moving through specifically through the morning for clearing through the evening, and even some winteriness on the back edge over some higher ground. Eventually the heavier prolonged rain clears by the early evening, but then we see plenty of showers packing in for the north and west. Again, snow over higher ground, but for most bit more of a mix or just rain with that west to northwesterly wind. This very unsettled northwesterly airstream continues. Plenty of pinks and purples on here, so plenty of wintriness around over higher ground, as we are going to see pretty chilly air mass associated with this. It stays very unsettled through much of Friday, and into Saturday we see a brief lull, we see a brief ridge of high pressure move in, but then we see another weather front approach from the south. This could be a really lively spell of weather, as we do see a pretty deep area of low pressure develop on the southern flank of the mother load to the north. You can see very strong winds associated with it, very deep central pressure here, down towards the 970s, could get deeper than that as it clears into Europe. But yeah, very strong north easterlies potentially on the back edge from this. It could be a proper snowmaker if we were in a probably cold air mass, but the air mass we likely will have isn't all too cold. You see the upper air temperatures, chilly air moving in at the moment, but it really arrives to rule as that squall feature and cold front clears tomorrow afternoon. And then you see we remain in the chilly polar maritime air, briefly getting out of it through Sunday, but getting back into it by Monday. So actually a pretty prolonged chilly spell over the next 5 or so days. If you look at the wind gusts, you can see there could be some very strong wind gusts along that squall front. You can see the very strong winds ahead of it in places, especially towards the south coast, and then a very quick drop off behind it. Pretty typical for a squall feature. And then as we head into the weekend, again, could see some very strong winds on the back edge of that low, but it will all depend on how far northwards and eastwards the low does get, and at this stage it still is pretty uncertain. If you look at the max temperatures, you can see as we head into tomorrow, mild in the southeast, but much cooler further northwards and westwards, with cool air coming in for all as it sweeps that milder air away behind the weather front. That sort of chilly pattern continues over the subsequent days. Overnight temperatures could drop down to freezing or below freezing in places, and daytime temperatures maybe only 5 to 8 degrees at best, higher ground colder than that. So that continues through Friday into Saturday, chilly again, and into Sunday where it could be only 4 or 5 degrees as we see that heavy rain further southwards. So by no means cold enough for widespread snow or anything too significant, but definitely pretty chilly indeed. You might want your hat and gloves back out, especially if you get trapped under some of these showers or prolonged areas of rain, and you'll definitely want quite a big coat out as well, because it is going to feel really cold with that northwesterly wind, especially through Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Now, if you have a look at the longer range, you can see the big low stratospheric polar vortex arriving in the coming hours, really pushing in through much of Thursday and Friday, and you can see bringing a very strong northwesterly wind. Brief ridge of high pressure through Saturday into Sunday, but then we see that low riding to our south through Monday morning, for eventually clearing. And I said there are hints potentially of some dry weather. Here the GFS does build a ridge of high pressure in for actually pushing a low through, and then trying to build a high pressure in again in the longer range, but it could encourage colder blasts there. The GFS here not producing anything too wintry, but actually a really quite cold air mass pushing in, getting sort of 8 to 10 degrees below average, so pretty chilly indeed if that sort of pattern did come off. But there is a lot of variability in that longer range. Next 5 to 7 days though, you're looking pretty likely to see northwesterly winds, pretty unsettled indeed at least the next 5 days, and pretty cold. If you look at the latest GM, very similar over the coming days. This northwesterly blast, that low rise to our south, and then we could see high pressure build in, but GM builds it in nowhere near as much. We stay in this cool and unsettled northwesterly flow for eventually that low heads towards the Bay of Biscay, and that could potentially bring up more southerly winds. Now, because we're still in early March here, it will probably still be pretty chilly, but we will have to see what happens with that. But it very much an unexpected wind direction this time of year, but yeah, pretty typical thunderstorm pattern this, but of course instead of being early March, unlikely to see much like that. If you compare to the ECMWF, again, northwesterly wind continuing to come in over the subsequent days, low rides to the south, but it doesn't develop anywhere near as much and actually heads much more through Europe. High pressure tries to build in, but we stay in this northwesterly flow all the way today, tends to stay really quite horrible and unsettled. Now, if you compare to the ensembles, pretty similar over the next 5 or 6 days, cool and unsettled. Upper air temperatures rising slightly more in the longer term as we see higher pressure trying to push back in. It's trying to introduce a little bit more in terms of milder air, but generally upper air temperatures still hovering around average and still staying relatively unsettled. So kind of around average, below average initially, maybe more above average in the longer term, but the consistency is remaining very unsettled. So humidity temperatures chilly over the coming days, maybe 5 to 8 degrees at best in London. And again, it will be very variable in precipitation and showers before trending slightly higher in the longer term, which is inevitable. We're at the point of the year where even if we saw the same air mass, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, the air mass would produce 1 or 2 degrees warmer at the surface, just because the sun strength is increasing, the ground temperature is starting to increase as well, just naturally as we progress towards summer. If we go back to the latest ECMWF, pretty similar. Below average over the next sort of 5 or 6 days, and then as we get into next week, potentially a little bit of a bump of above average, but that's when that high pressure topples in, and it could give a little bit milder air, but of course it will be accompanied by precipitation. With a change in air mass like that, definitely would see seeing rain and cloud around, and again will most likely be pretty similar to the GFS in the longer term, but we're going to go out to day 11 so far as it hasn't fully loaded. So not too much changes in terms of the overall theme that we've been talking about over the past few days. Chilly and unsettled in the short term to medium term, maybe slightly milder in the longer term, and some hints of drier weather from some runs or some briefly drier weather. But the majority are keeping us unsettled and cool for the foreseeable future. And there could be some very disruptive weather over the coming days, with a squall feature tomorrow with very strong winds and heavy rain, and then maybe further heavy rain into the weekend. And around that and in between, plenty of heavy, thundery showers with hail, grapple, and even snow mixed in with some of them. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.